welcome to all of you. Welcome to everyone listening this session, and our apologies for some of the technical difficulties that we've had today. That's just reality, and that's just an example of how human we all are. So this session is part of the to Action conference that is Action. For joining in now and for others that are listening in later, this session is getting under the hood of why these response is so important. And we'll be talking to our amazing champions here, who I'll introduce in just a moment. If you're a social media person and you're commenting, reposting, tweeting, mentioning, whatever you want to do during this session or later, please do remember to use the hashtag #BetterWorld and of course Quantum Effect. You can connect with all of our amazing panelists directly by LinkedIn. We have Firoz just in the chat room just there, ready to take any questions and answers that you may have as well. My name is Zubair Anwar-Bawani. I'm the joint CEO of Quantum 5, and I'll be hosting this session. And it's a pleasure to invite our amazing champions here. So we've got Deb Kaplan from SAP. We've got Natasha Freidus from NeedsList, Claudia Apio from the IRG NGO Forum. I'm going to struggle with some of these names, you know. David Imbago from Core Group, and Sana Mustafa from, Sana, where are you from? How do I pronounce that properly?
You mean country-wise?
The organization.
Ah, Asylum Access.
Asylum Access, that's right. I was just testing there. No, I'm joking. So it's a pleasure to have you all on here. Like I said, our conversation today really is about trying to understand a little bit about the work that you do. We've seen how technology offers us a new way to connect with needs on the ground. We're also going to get a chance to understand a little about one which leverages cutting edge software, directly connects suppliers, funders, and large organizations with local actors through your RespondLocal software. Natasha, I want to kick off with you first. I want to understand a little bit more about your story, inspiration for NeedsList, and that will help put some context around some of the other questions. And this is a light-in conversation. Anyone can jump in at any point. There's no kind of structured format to this session. So yeah, Natasha, tell us a bit about how you met Amanda and where did you get your inspiration?
Sure. Hi. Really happy to be here, and really amazing group of people to have together this morning or this afternoon. So about 4 years ago in 2016, I was on the ground directly volunteering in France, actually, for the Syrian, as numbers of Syrians came into Europe and from other places as well. And Amanda was in the States, and we were both really struck. We had known each other for a while, actually, and we were really struck by how challenging it was to help. So I was helping coordinate a local solidarity effort, and at the time, it was full crisis mode. We needed everything. So we needed diapers, we needed someone to take someone to the doctor, we needed translation, we needed money. But every time we started emailing this huge, we had a huge outpouring of support. And every time we started emailing or posting those needs on Facebook, they became outdated like almost instantly. And so it ended up being a coordination nightmare. And meanwhile, Amanda was in the States, and what she found is people who wanted to help there were packing up these containers of supplies and shipping them to Greece and to other countries. And these were things like pasta and bicycles and all these items that could be found readily and much more less expensive, of course, and more sustainably in Europe. So it made no sense to us, and we started thinking about what kind of technology tools. We both came from a technology for impact, social impact background, and we're like, well, what could we use instead? So I actually started using a wedding registry. That was what we call them, the first iteration or proof of concept of NeedsList with our own volunteers. And the more we dug into it, the more we realized that this problem wasn't just one specific to the refugee crisis in Europe, but it was really pervasive for the aid sector in general. So that was the kind of backstory.
Mm-hmm. And I know you and I have met a couple of times before as well when we were in Geneva, what you were working on back then. So this is what, 2017, I think? And
Yep.
NeedsList was very different to what it is now. Tell us a little bit about the focus of that. What's intrinsic about the journey that you've taken and what the product or service, if you call it that, looks like right now?
Yeah, so the main problems we've been trying to address have remained the same. It's really around efficiency and using technology to create a more efficient aid system with values that underpin that around providing aid with dignity and collaboration. What happened is when we got started, we were really targeting individuals. So how could Joe over here make a difference more effectively? But as we started digging into it, we realized it wasn't just individuals that had this problem of wanting to help and not knowing where. It was actually companies as well in the private sector. And that's really, I think that meeting where we first met, Zubir, was this eye-opening meeting for me, where I was in Geneva surrounded by all these representatives from the private sector, including yourself, saying, where do we start? And I said, oh my goodness, well, if companies like SAP and IKEA don't know where to start, what if we built a way that really allowed them to engage directly and leverage their own products and services too? So we now have two different products. One is called ConnectLocal, which is really geared towards individuals, which is that first piece of software we built. And our new product, RespondLocal, is really much more directed towards connecting the private sector and local businesses with local responders and local organizations.
So it's a one-stop fulfillment center, I guess, where, if I've understood it correctly, and I remember from the earlier conversations that we had, this really will enable anyone anywhere to do their part in helping someone that needs something. So
exactly.
What would that typically look like? Are we talking disaster relief or everyday stuff that we're seeing around COVID?
Yeah, so when we got started, it was, of course, focused on supporting refugee serving organizations. And then some of those same organizations also were active in disasters. And so we expanded it to crisis relief more broadly. And as we move into 2021, what we're seeing is it's not black and white, like this is the time of crisis and this is not crisis. It's all one big, we're facing a global crisis now. You look at climate emergency, that is an ongoing crisis. So we're really thinking about our tools as much more tools to build local resiliency. So yes, they can step up in times of crisis. Of course, that's when you've got the huge outpouring of support. Yeah. But at any point, local organizations or local businesses can say, I've got some stock here, I don't need any more. Who needs it? And post it up as an offer on the platform.
Excellent. And that brings me nicely into, I want to move across. You can sort of look at this from a slightly different perspective. You're based in Kenya. How do technologies and models like NeedList then support the transparency and accountability in the aid sector? Because that's a huge issue that we talk about regularly. And it's something that donors really want to understand and grasp. So how can the technology and something like NeedList support that? What's your experience of that? And also, I'm keen to learn about how that model can be scaled beyond one specific country.
I think you cut off a little bit there, but David, that question's for you.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm having some internet issues right now.
Yep, we got
you. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I lost connection for a while Tasha was speaking, but I assume that she already mentioned how the platform works. So yes, Core Group partnered with NeedsList to implement the platform in 5 different countries in Africa in this year. So these countries were Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And for me, when this idea was shared with me to start working on, immediately what I thought was accountability and transparency. I think that this platform is a great way for civil society, for ministries of health, and local organizations to be able to have an independent body that is outside their organizations that can hold them accountable as well for their transactions in terms of supply chain, for example. So, for example, here in Ecuador, and it's very sad that I have to share this story, but we had so many corruption cases during the COVID-19 response about people in the government buying masks and supplies with overpriced, and of course this is related to cases of corruption in the country, which is not strange to the situation in Latin America. So for me, when I saw this platform, was wow, this is like something that the Ministry of Health and different government civil society can use to be able to report back to the constituents and say, yes, I mean, this is our accountability and an independent body that has the records of how these transactions were made. So that's how, for example, I think that's a great way to use technology to have more local accountability and social accountability as well.
And is blockchain and data ledgers part of the ecosystem here, or is that something that will come further down the line?
I can take that one.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. But,
yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, Natasha, please go ahead.
Oh, just, yeah, we're looking at blockchain further down the line. Right now, we have not found that the challenges really around that direct, the supply chains have been strong so far. Mm-hmm. And as we scale up, and if we need the blockchain, we will be building in a ledger system. But we really don't go with the exponential technology first. We found that lots of times people are talking about AI and blockchain as the cure to all humanitarian ills, while there's some really basic, simple technologies that are still not in place. Like, for example, and Sana can tell you more about the project we just ran together, but it was around distributing funding to local organizations. And a lot of them, a lot of the organizations we were working with were run by refugees, and they don't have access to bank accounts. So yeah, there's sometimes I think we're really looking for the simplest way to solve the problem and building in the technology from there.
Yeah, and I think that I'm glad you've mentioned that. Obviously, there's a role for blockchain and AI to play, but if it's not required, then why reinvent the wheel? And I guess some of the world's problems require the simplest of solutions. They just need the right people to lead them or implement them. And that's what I like about what's being offered in terms of NeedList. That moves us nicely on to Sana. How can we ensure representation, I guess, and inclusion from the global south as we consider this as a new model of aid? And then part two of that question, I guess, is how do NeedSlist tools support recognition of people on the ground at the local level, so the local actors? And Deb, please feel free to jump into that question as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Zubair, and thanks for having us here. How can we ensure inclusion? Well, first, I think there's no magic answer that applies on everyone. It really changes from a sector to another and from a country to another. However, there are things that we can think about. And the major question I would ask if I was in an organization or in a country or in a business is that what are the barriers? How can I dismantle those barriers? And one of the barriers that we work on in the refugee response sector are really the systematic ones, the ones that, it's really just part of the system, part of the way the refugee response sector is designed. It was designed in 1951 by white men in Geneva and New York. And so how inclusive that was of refugees at that time. And ever since has not been really revisited and has not really been changing in a way that really represents the people that it serves and represents the people that it works with. Mm-hmm. And so I think the system is inherently exclusive. And this is the main issue. So dismantling this doesn't really start only from top down, it's really also bottom up. And so we've been trying to build a movement, bottom up movement, because the system is top down exclusive. And also the other problem is that the system is also very focused on humanitarian aid response, which really not solving the major issues, the root causes that refugees face. And so there's a reason once a refugee, 27 years a refugee. And because, you know, you could still deliver food baskets for people for 25 years, but no one still like yet addressing like why people can't work and why people don't have the right to work and why people don't have rights at work. And so if I was a refugee designing the response, I would want to work, you know, I would design a response and I would design policies and strategies and programs and funding that would address these issues, that would address the needs of my community. And how would these people know the needs of my community? They say they know the needs via surveys and consultations, and those are like symbolic engagements and inclusion. These are not meaningful inclusion, and we're not really dismantling the barriers. And those are good efforts, but they are small efforts in comparison to that big issue, and in comparison to the fact that this problem is huge and is structural and systematic. In terms of, so that's like really in general to answer your question. And interestingly enough, we cannot discuss this issue in the refugee response sector without really seeing the intersectionality in all movements. It's similarly to Black Lives Matter movement, to LGBTQ movement, to women's rights movement. You know, you need those people at the heart of the solution. You can't just speak on behalf of them and you can't design solutions for them. So it's not coming from a concept that's very far distant. And this is really what brought me and Natasha together a couple of years ago. We met in those places and events that were done by, you know, like one of the like 100 companies about refugees and really without refugees. And we both shared our frustration. And I learned about the amazing platform and software that they have, NeedsList, which really, you know, what's important about it, it's about local needs and it's about locals. And this is what I'm working on, is how can we shift power and funding back to the people, back to local communities? How can we localize the solutions, but also not doing it in a trendy way, actually doing it meaningfully. And so we partnered with NeedsList early this summer in 2020. And also with Open Society Foundations, Amnesty, Oxfam, a number of refugee and local-led organizations. And we've come together and we designed a campaign where we used the amazing platform, NeedsList, to really direct funding and to give an opportunity to those who don't know how to fund directly local organizations, to fund local organizations, to go on one list that's trusted, one list that's vetted, and to be like, you just have like to, especially because those organizations were like really at the heart of response to COVID. So it was just like one step is you have to go there and we're taking care of everything else. I mean, we all agree that this is like one time of solution and this is not the ultimate solution, but it really helped in breaking a lot of the barriers of delivering funding and of raising awareness about the importance of funding local organizations.
And I think, you know, you touched upon a number of different points, and I was intrigued to learn how you teamed up with Natasha, because obviously one of the core things is that we can't do all of this alone. We all need to think collaboratively. We all have our strengths and we all have our areas of expertise, but combined, those partnerships become, as you said, meaningful. It was also interesting to learn, you talk vision and bringing local actors in at the very fundamental level. And I think that goes back to David's point about transparency and accountability. And it's interesting to see how through platforms like this and the integration of expertise at the high level with what's required on the ground, what you're able to achieve is level the playing field. And this means that the smaller NGOs that may have struggled with access to funding or resources, or even being able to address the needs of the local community in the way that they feel is best, is now being recognized. And I think that's absolutely amazing in terms of how this ecosystem is shaping up. Deborah, what's your thought on inclusion and representation? Because I know you have a view on that as well. I'm keen to hear that.
So So just a couple things. Let me give you a bit of background with our relationship with NeedsList. So I can't take any of the credit. We run an awesome social entrepreneurship program at SAP called 1 Billion Lives.
Yep.
And it's one of our people who brought this idea to life. And what we've been focused on is enabling local actors, reducing time to fulfill a need. So we believe that we can use digital capabilities to shorten cycle time and ensure that vital aid can get to those people who need it faster and more effectively, so that the needs of individuals are actually met sooner and they get the goods and services that they need more first. So with Tasha and NeedsList, what we've been doing is leveraging these digital capabilities, but also our assets as a company, SAP. So we have the largest business network for buyers and suppliers in the world and transact over $3 trillion US in goods and services a year. And so here we have this network of leaders in the enterprise space, but they're not connected to those leaders in the B2B space and the NGO and social enterprise sector. So what we really want to do is connect these communities that we can effectively drive change through using our technology, our people, our assets, and ecosystem. So we firmly believe that in order to drive a more equitable world, that we must do this. And one of the ways we do that is through collaborations like the one we have with NeedsList, where we can actually scale our impact.
Excellent. I think I'm familiar with the 1 Billion Lives program, and I think, like you say, that you know, someone that brought this to your attention, I think that's just testament to how strong the will to do good is, and that's also the time that we live in. You know, we're all on this journey together. Claudia, thank you for joining us. I want to pose the next question to you. Basically, just to build on what Deborah and Sana have mentioned, how can efforts support local economies and work towards building resilience? I mean, I have an idea, but I guess you're better placed to explain that, given your experience and your alliance with NeedsList. Are you able to?
That's my question.
That's your question.
Thank you so much, Zubai, and the rest of the panelists. My name is Claudia Abu from Uganda. I come from the northern part of Uganda that was affected by war for over 21 years. And we were living in internally displaced people's camps. And it's just about 10 years now that the place is quite peaceful, and we are getting back on track to start living our lives as before. I'm sorry that I joined in late. First of all, I had a poor network. Then secondly, interacting with the technology took me quite some time, but I'm happy to be here. As I come to respond to your question, allow me start by just giving a brief so that you understand the context from where I am coming.
Sure.
In 2018, I met one of the chairpersons of the networks, because I am the executive director of a network that brings together over 150 NGOs and CBOs together. So this is a platform for information sharing and all that. The chairperson of another network in the central part of Uganda, that is where the capital is, Kampala. And he told me he has a friend who is interested in partnering with people who are working with refugees, and they want to use technology. They use technology in that. So I was like, what kind of technology? and all. I had a lot of questions. Then he told me, no, if you have questions, let me send a mail introducing you to her. And he sent a mail introducing me to Amanda, who is also from NeedsList, the co-founder of NeedsList with Natasha. So when he did that, we started communicating with Amanda, and we had a telephone call. Looking at that, I saw it was a great opportunity because in Uganda, the use of technology is still not very high like other parts of the world, I may say, and most especially in northern part of Uganda. So when I interacted with her, I told her I am interested in the partnership, and please don't ever think that partnership is only about money. What I am going to learn from you is more than money. Teach me, teach my people, introduce us to this technology, and any other thing that comes by, we appreciate. But for now, this is worth more than even a funding that I would get and spend in a year. So we started from there communicating and all this, and she told me about the chatbot, the needs bot, how NeedsList is helping in humanitarian response through requesting for needs using that platform. We had a number of discussions, and I told Amanda that I am interested in something that will be user friendly in Uganda. And she told me, okay, we can go a step further and see how to do this. So we entered a partnership, we signed agreements, and I told them, please, let's not stop online. Come and see who you have been talking to, where the person lives, and all this. And then you will know that we are serious about this partnership. And so she promised me, and indeed she sent a team. So NeedsList sent a team that came, and we developed, we started developing our software for applying for needs using the phones offline. You don't need internet or anything. You go to the field, you can enter your needs, and then you come where there's network and posts in the system. So we started this process. Unfortunately, when COVID came on, immediately the team left Uganda. We were sent into a total lockdown.
Right.
For that was in March when we went for a lockdown for quite some time. So, but we started the process and we kept on moving on like that. So we started by applying for needs, sending in the needs that we see in the communities, and we got replies through this chatbot. People willing to support us, to fund us, and other people actually decided to email me directly and ask for account details so they could support the cause. And whenever I would ask them, they would say, yeah, we saw this through NeedsList platform, and we thought we needed to support you. And to date, some of those people have supported us outside of the NeedsList platform, but we keep on informing NeedsList team that out of this, we have got these partners who want to fund us to do maybe support people who are affected by floods, people who are in the camps, like the South Sudan conflict. Most of those refugees have come to our area. So when I look at all this, it brings me to say technology, I think, is the best way to go for now, to me. And COVID has proved to us that this innovation was better off, because when we were in a lockdown, we were not allowed to move anywhere. I could only use the platform to request for needs, which later on I got the funding, and I supported the people with hand washing facilities, with sanitizers, and all this. We got the money through the platform, the NeedsList platform that we are part of. And so, if there is anything that economies should think about, is to ease them the way we partner and support one another. I am one person that keeps writing a lot of proposals, but I can tell you the proposals that I know most of you have experienced Yeah, applying for or in one way or the other is really, really complicated. I don't know whether it is world over, but I see the way you labor. Just last night, I worked up to about 5 a.m.
Wow.
trying to respond to a call. So much to do. But once you're part of NeedsList platform, or like I am, after putting in all your information that is needed, the profile and all that, when you're requesting for needs, you don't have to again keep on putting on the same. But the people I'm applying for grants to, I have ever worked with them. I partnered with them and they have most of my information. But even still, they want me to upload it again. So it is quite hectic and you cannot respond to any emergency with that kind of conventional way of um, seeking for help compared to the innovation that we have now, that is the NeedsList platform. So if we can all support one another and have something simple like that, that can help us support our people, give them real-time support, just like we give for ambulatory services, that would be excellent.
I think, Claudia, you've just articulated such a beautiful journey. I think, Natasha, you've got a champion here who's actively demonstrating the journey that an NGO or an organization can take. And I think it's highlighted some really great points. And clearly building hope and inspiration in the local economy among people. A little bit of if I can ask everyone just to mute their microphones, and then that might just help with the experience. Great, thank you. Thank you, Claudia. I'm absolutely amazing. I'm just looking at some of the comments that are coming through on the chat, and everyone's inspired by your story and your journey, and also your own resilience. And I think there's a lot that can be learned from that. Deb, I want to move across to you and just come back to an earlier point that you mentioned about this entrepreneurial program. What role can social innovation and obviously entrepreneurship play in this whole ecosystem? I mean, is there even a relevance for that, or is it just something that we casually think about?
Well, I think as a business, we have the responsibility to leverage our core assets, our core business, our people's passions, and our vast ecosystem of in the service of good. So I think if you give your people, your communities an opportunity and a channel to do that, it will happen. I'm really sorry I missed most of the question, but
No, I was just asking about the role social innovation and entrepreneurship can play.
The role social innovation and entrepreneurship can play. So, so as a technology company, the heart of our business, our core strength is innovation, and all companies, all organizations, all communities, NGOs, and social enterprises have to be on the leading edge and innovate. For us, it's innovating around technology, creating a culture of change and a culture of purpose that ignites people's passions. And every day we're learning. We have the ability to tap into this collective creativity of our people and this broad ecosystem of customers and partners. And so if you have the ability to do that, you have the opportunity to scale good and use technology for social good and help lift communities and drive a more equitable world. We've been doing some really interesting work with social entrepreneurs and social enterprises. So for example, in addition to what we're doing with Tasha and NeedsList, where we're connecting those in need with those who can help supply and meet those needs through the Ariba network and connecting to NeedsList and their customers' networks. We've also launched a campaign called 5 and 5 by 25. And this is where we procure from social enterprises. So we've committed to shifting 5% of our spend to social enterprises and inclusive businesses to help drive that sector and drive, again, a more equitable world. So I think that through these collaborations and partnerships, we have a great opportunity through social entrepreneurship, whether it's through your people and you're guiding them through social entrepreneurship activities and challenges, and to bring these values to life in business, whether it's through an entrepreneurship program or a social entrepreneurship program. We have a huge opportunity to do good through these types of partnerships and leveraging our core businesses and people and ecosystems.
Great. Natasha, I want to come back to you. How can the NeedsList platform be used in the aid and humanitarian sector to better deliver on aid? And you and I have had this conversation in the past about getting emergency relief goods to the place that needs it the most in the time frame that it should be delivered. But could you just give a bit of context or an explanation around how the platform can do that?
Yeah, I think actually one of our first success stories really illustrates that. So as I think I mentioned, we really got started in the context of the refugee crisis in Europe, and we were working with a number of small community-based organizations on the island of Lesbos in Greece. And one of these, a very small and scrappy nonprofit, which are our favorite kinds, had worked with children and realized that they were on an island, they were at risk of drowning, and they really needed a AED, a defibrillator, in order to responsibly monitor and work with the children that they had, that they were supervising. So they posted a need for a defibrillator. Traditional model, this was a US-based organization. So traditionally, you know, whether it's a small organization or a large one, they would ask their donors for money. Those are about $1,500. Ask them to purchase one in the States and send it over, right? By the time that happens, you're talking, you know, depending on the number of items, it can be weeks, it can be months. And oftentimes by the time the items get there, they're not needed anymore. So in this example, they posted, we needed an AED. And another locally based organization across the island, you know, 10 kilometers away, said, you know what, we have 3 sitting in our warehouse, and they sent one over the next day. Now, that's where I said, okay, we're onto something. And this is, for me, what was so powerful about that is it was not, first of all, you skip the whole procurement piece because you're leveraging resources that were just sitting there. And we've seen this over and over again, that especially the larger NGOs might have items sitting in their warehouses that could go to use by smaller organizations on the ground if they only knew it. So it was also a pivotal moment for me in terms of how I used to think it was just the businesses that were going to be the ones that were posting offers and organizations had the needs. But in this example, of course, it was a peer-to-peer exchange, and that we see that over and over again. And I think actually, as we're looking at issues like COVID and natural disasters, what we're seeing is that these are local businesses have needs too. So part of the beauty of this technology is really quite philosophical in a way that we all have needs and offers at different times in our lives. And if we can leverage a marketplace to exchange those, we'll be able to be much more efficient, not just for aid, but along the whole trajectory. I think the issues Sana raised are so important. You know, we've seen folks leverage our resources as well to get internships or support for along the career trajectory or place people in jobs. So, you know, needs don't have to just be blankets and food baskets. We left it quite open, actually, in our work with Claudia's organization in Uganda. Mm-hmm. And what really threw me is we expected it to be more blankets and food baskets. But when you ask people what they need, they were posting things like, we need better roads, we need chemistry teachers, we need sewing machines for the women who are starting their businesses. So it's not just about aid in that moment of crisis. It's really about the recovery and resilience and longer term economic development. I think that's key here.
Yeah, and I think you touched upon a point which is going to be my next question. So thank you for prompting it, and it's to both Sana and David. If in order for what Natasha's talked about, you know, for it not to be just blankets and food, what is it that that you guys currently need? So if I put that in context. Obviously, we know what you're focusing on, but in order to scale the work that you're involved in, what support do you need and what innovation do you see needing to take place to help shape that and grow? Sana, to you first.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Scaling. I think that's what I call it, the chicken and egg issue, also known, because when we talk about funding and investment and social innovation, the main issue is that everyone wants you to scale and to see that you can scale for them to fund you. And you cannot, and if you don't get funded, you can't scale. And so it's like, what do you do here? And that's the issue of all local organizations, is that they are doing amazing work. They would love to scale. And actually, if they can scale, the impact of their work is so significant, but they can't scale because other organizations or funders would not fund them because they are small and they can't scale. So unless someone who's with like innovative lens would come and invest in those organizations, we will always have this issue. And this it could apply on not only local organizations, any business, and I mean not only on non-for-profit organizations or humanitarian aid organizations or anything. And so we need, I think, what we need this trust from the funders, that for the reality is that most of them come from global north. And so we need this trust, and we need this like mindset shift and change of like, okay, the solution is local. COVID proved this. INGOs, international INGOs, left when COVID started. They couldn't deliver aid anymore, and they had to protect their staff. Who was left to deal with COVID? Local communities and refugees themselves, refugee communities. And so we have amazing proof of evidence. And so maybe it is time to shift our mindset and about the way we invest and the way we fund, and look at about the barriers to funding and dismantling them, and believing that maybe you need to be that funder that would help this organization to scale. So other funders than traditional funders, if they say like you need to scale, then the organization is ready.
Right. David, what's your take on that? What do you need to scale, to grow?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And I totally agree with Sana about the funding. I was also looking at Tasha's message on the chat about how hard it is to write these kind of applications and these grant proposals, that in the end, there are these lengthy processes that in most cases, they are not successful. So yeah, that's definitely something that we need. Also on the needs that was mentioned before, I think that the platform itself can be a way of mapping the issues that are happening at the country level, which can also inform the need for scaling, So that's also something that I have seen that can be another use, an indirect use of the platform that might not be the direct one. Besides that, I think that also scaling sometimes it's related with growing into the international level, but in this case, I think that scaling should also be scaling into reaching everyone in the world you're working. So it might not necessarily be like, okay, my organization is now having offices in 3 or 5 different countries, but say my organization has offices or has reach or has community outreach in the places that are more remote to reach. And that's for me the scaling, for example.
So if I understand it correctly, it's not just about traditional scale in terms of operationally being a much larger organization, or as you say, many multi-level countries, but also reaching the hard to reach, the excluded, different terrains in different countries. And we've had these conversations before as well about the land terrain of some countries makes it near impossible to get aid to, but there are obviously local actors to do that. So I guess if there are investors or social impact investors listening in, you need to be reaching out to us, because this is where you need to be putting perhaps some of your time and energy. We're almost at the end of our session. I've got one last question for you, and it's a little bit of a curveball, something that you'd be unprepared for, but I love to do this because I like to see your reactions. And we'll go with you, Natasha, first. So my question really is, what does your 2030 look like?
My 2030?
Your 2030, yeah.
I think right now we have under 2% of humanitarian aid financing goes to local organizations. So let's move that to 90%, diminish the power of INGOs by 90%, have connected local movement building worldwide, and and aid being much more focused on the trajectory of from basic needs to livelihoods. And all the SDGs met too, by the way.
And a few other things alongside as well. Sana, what's your 2030?
Well, the war in Syria taught me that I don't think that much further, because you don't know what's going to happen. So I think my current present and my day-to-day should look like where, more people are speaking up, and people are part of the solutions, and people are funded, and we're working all together, different sectors. Inclusion of refugees in my case and where I work on doesn't mean exclusion of others. It just means like the main stakeholder, the user, is not in the center of the design, and so let's put the user back. So my present looks like when we're all working together meaningfully.
Great, excellent. Deborah, what's your 2030 looking like?
I like Dana's approach. The way I look into the future is that I hope technology and the ability to harness social innovation really drives a more inclusive world, and more and more enterprises and businesses really become social enterprises and building impact into the heart of their business.
Excellent. David, what's your 2030?
Yeah, so I'm a medical doctor by background, so I would like to see health go beyond the traditional this definition of health and go into well-being, because I feel like that definition will encompass more of all the social issues that are affecting people right now. So think about education, security, overall mental health, for example. Those kind of things are the things that I would like to see. Besides that, of course, I would like to see an inequality gap around the world be reduced, because I think that most of the problems that we are discussing now are related to that inequality. And finally, of course, as Sasha was saying, that all the SDGs accomplished.
Excellent. So big wish list. Listen, I want to thank you all for taking the time, despite the little technical hiccup earlier on, for sharing your insights and giving us a little bit of insight into what NeedsList, how it's working, and your journeys in transforming local humanitarian responses. Obviously, the conversation is not over. It doesn't stop here. This was just a precursor to many more conversations and actions that we need to take. We'd be delighted to take the conversation with you guys forward in 2021 as we look at what the next decade looks like. And there are many different formats and platforms in doing that. For everyone that's been listening and watching in and will be listening and watching this later, don't forget to post your comments, like, shares, retweets, and everything else that you do with social media. Remembering the following hashtags: Better World, STEP, and obviously Quantum Effect. If you want to reach out to any one of our panelists, then please do so via LinkedIn, or you can reach out to us directly at Quantum5 and we can make that happen. And like I said, if there are any investors or impact investors listening in, then maybe this is something that you can look at and park your money in doing good. Thank you, Natasha, Deborah, David. I know Sana's have to go, and Claudia as well. We'll keep conversations going with you. We're here to support. Thank you very much again for your time, and enjoy the rest of the conference. There's plenty more sessions to see and view. And don't forget to check out the exhibition booths, all the great stuff that people are doing. Take care, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.